Mr. Flanagan.
In this business that we're involved in, it's very easy to criticise, but it's not that easy to find solutions. And in this case, it definitely isn't easy to find solutions. So I think, to be quite honest, I think there's a little bit of political opportunism here, having a go at the Commissioner, because it would be a popular thing to do. But I don't think it's necessarily the right thing to do, and it's not simple. But one thing I keep hearing over and over again from MEPs here is that the biggest problem is the grain is staying in the European Union. And at the moment, that is a short or a medium-ish term issue to deal with because of the war, and hopefully not a long-term issue. But the elephant in the room here for me is, it is actually the policy of the European Union now, and the policy of many of the people here who have spoke about the worry of grain staying in the EU, that the Ukraine be fast-tracked with membership into the EU. And where do you think the grain will go then? It will go into the market that they are then part of, that you both support in one vote, depending on when the media is looking to see, are you showing solidarity to Ukraine? When it all began, when there was more coverage about it, you all wanted this to happen immediately. And I myself joined that stampede. We must show solidarity to Ukraine, and we must welcome them into the European Union. But it seems like solidarity, like bread and grain, goes stale around here. And now that the reality of it is coming home to roost, you now have a problem with temporarily Russian grain ending up on the EU markets. Can you square the circle, please? You want it to be a permanent situation, but you don't want it to happen now. Make up your minds, will you?
Thank you very much. That ends the round of coordinators. And Commissioner, you have the opportunity now to give your first replies.
Thank you very much. I'm going to switch to Polish. Thank you very much for all your comments and questions. I will try and be more precise when it comes to my proposal, which is my personal proposal for now. However, this has been presented to the Commission. This proposal is now under discussion. The talks are underway under a platform appointed by the Commission. There are representatives of Ukraine and the 5 frontline member states participating in this platform. Now, the proposal on subsidies for Ukraine is as follows. Perhaps you could compare this mechanism to the state aid in the EU. It would work more or less like the state aid in the EU. Ukrainian traders could pay with those subsidies for exports to the ports. Ukraine is in favor. Now I would like to answer the question of Mr. Dorfman. 2.2/3% goes to the ports, only that little because there are no buyers. We are not capable of forcing others to buy Ukrainian grain, which is more expensive because of the transit and transport costs via Romania or Poland. Russian grain is cheaper. Russia doesn't need to bear those costs. The result is, as we have seen, Ukrainian grain stays in Poland. Ukrainian cereals are cheaper than the Polish grain. It might still pay off to send it to Germany, Lithuania, Latvia, but not much further. It is not economically viable to send those cereals to Africa. It's Ukraine that needs to find buyers, to find contracts, to find outlets. Those subsidies could cover the extra costs, i.e. transport to the ports. I can't think of any better solution. That said, this is not an official position of the Commission yet. The debate is ongoing and I'm trying to be as frank as I can. This is my proposal. but this is supported by Ukraine and the 5 frontier member states. I can hardly think of a better solution because we are talking here about different extremes. Blockage, no access or full access. Someone mentioned purchasing and donations, charitable donations. We have looked into this, but the costs would be twice as much as the value of the grain, depending on the destination. Let's say we pay 250 euro per ton of this wheat, and then if we want to give it as an act of charity, in poor countries we need to add 250 per ton or even 500 euro per ton. So the costs are inflated, and then we can do this charity without really solving any problems. Now, moving on to the proposal on the table as presented by me, this is 30 euro per ton. Those are estimates. Ukraine would be able to take advantage of this. That would be viable and cost-effective for potential buyers and purchases from outside Europe, if Ukraine were able to cover those extra transit costs. This is the gist of the proposal. Of course, there's some nitty-gritty, some technical details, but I would like to flag one more thing. It only makes sense if the temporary exports ban to those 5 frontier countries is extended, because if it is not extended, the bulk of it will end up in the 5 frontier countries, perhaps to Germany. Mr. Dorfman wanted to have precise data. We know how much grain has left Ukraine and ended up directly in the 5 member states. Romania, 9 million tons up to April, out of which 6.5 have been subjected to further transit. 2.5 million tons stayed in Romania. Poland, 4,100,000 tons left. Poland, 3,400,000 stayed, 700,000 transit. So we do have comprehensive data. But this is not the problem. I think there is a misunderstanding in this discussion, a kind of cognitive error. This is not about lack of efficiency or capacity. This is not about the fact that there are eager buyers waiting for this grain transited via Romania. This is not the problem of infrastructure. The problem is that it's not economically cost-effective. It's not viable. It costs too much. Therefore, this grain ends up in the EU. Of course, we did have this Black Sea initiative for a while, so in that period it was possible to export to third countries. But with this Black Sea being closed, with the Black Sea route being closed, we will end up with this grain in Europe. The forecasts were 278 million from our harvest. It has been revised downwards, 271. So this is our domestic production, but this is far higher than our consumption, which is 256 million tons. So we will have a surplus. There was a question about GAEC and the suspension of certain GAEC standards. GAEC 8, non-productive areas. Is it going to be extended? Are we going to extend this suspension? We would need the whole legislative procedure. We would need to change the Basic Act because we cannot take another implementing decision. It was only possible to do it now, again. The suspension of GAEC was an exceptional situation. We were all afraid that there would be a shortage of grain. Some member states even introduced an export ban. Today the situation is totally different. Now we are thinking about import bans. There is a surplus of grain, and I'm wondering whether in this situation we should really increase our productive areas, or perhaps we shouldn't. If there is a surplus, I would be inclined to say that perhaps we shouldn't suspend it. I could give you the example of the wine sector. We do not increase the production. Sometimes we even agree to reduce it. I would like to know what your take on this is. The decision is not an easy one, but I can tell you that the Commission has not been thinking about extending this suspension of GAIEC 7 or 8. We are not thinking that we should do it because the situation on the market has changed. Of course, each member state has its own specificities. Farms below 10 hectares are exempted from GAIEC, and that suspension, or if it were to be extended, it would be most advantageous to those countries where farms are big, because they could have more productive areas. So we are talking about this idea which I have flagged here under the platform. Ukraine is in favor, the member states are in favor, so those are those subsidies. When it comes to the imports ban and its extension, of course Ukraine is against extending such a ban. But the subsidies have been welcomed. The idea has been floated and welcomed, and we do need